The civil rights movement had a strong beginning in Kansas, as the state was one of the first to bring up issues concerning segregation. These issues were prevalent throughout the country. In 1915, 13 parents attempted to enroll their children in their local schools and were denied the right to do so. As a result, the 20 children of the parents were informed they would have to continue to attend one of the 4 local schools for African Americans. The parents of the students filed a suit against the Topeka Board of Education, arguing that the separate but equal ruling that the courts had declared in Plessy v. Ferguson could no longer be considered constitutional under the 14th Amendment. Black and white children had grown up in very different settings, and the schools that they attended were highly unequal in both the attention they received and the monetary funds that were available to them. Many African American schools received used equipment, whereas white schools were able to buy new equipment with their funding. The school textbooks for African American students were often outdated and had inaccurate information, making it difficult for teachers to teach current methods and models while still using decade-old materials. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, took on the court case, arguing that the school system in its current state not only separated the races, but also represented the systematic separation that created an atmosphere of superiority and inferiority amongst whites and blacks in the nation. Thurgood Marshall was a lawyer who presented the court case to the Supreme Court. He argued that students who attended the African American schools in Topeka, Kansas, grew up feeling inferior to whites because their books, materials, and buildings were all lacking in quality and information. Marshall pointed out that many teachers would come to schools but would not stay for any length of time because the salaries were far better in white schools. Classrooms were often overcrowded with terrible conditions, which not only affected the physical condition of students but also played a role in the psychological conditioning of students. For instance, a student might have been told that they are given equal opportunities in the classroom, but a student who attends a school that has the latest resources, textbooks, and equipment is going to be more confident than a student who has to attend a school on a broken-down bus because that is the only space available for them. Many people know the outcome of the Supreme Court case hearing. In 1954, the NAACP gained a major victory in the Supreme Court with the ruling that just because races were separate did not mean they were equal. This thus ruling it unconstitutional for states to keep children from pursuing better education in white schools. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. The ruling was unanimous and sent a strong, united message to states that segregation would no longer be tolerated by the federal government. Some passages that have been highlighted from the Supreme Court ruling are: today, education is a principal instrument in awakening the child to cultural values, in preparing him for later professional training, and in helping him to adjust normally to his environment. In these days, it is doubtful that any child may reasonably be expected to succeed in life if he is denied the opportunity of an education. Such an opportunity, where the state has undertaken to provide it, is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. Segregation of white and colored children in public schools has a detrimental effect upon colored children. The impact is greater when it has the sanction of the law, for the policy of separating the races is usually interpreted as denoting the inferiority of the Negro group. A sense of inferiority affects the motivation of a child to learn. Segregation, with the sanction of law, therefore, has a tendency to retard the educational and mental development of Negro children and to deprive them of some of the benefits they would receive in a racially integrated school system. We conclude in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. These are all statements that made the intentions of the Supreme Court very clear. Segregation was wrong and would no longer be supported by the federal government. However, what many do not know is what happened after the ruling of the Supreme Court. the Topeka Middle School system had in fact been integrated since 1941, and the high school had been integrated since 1871. In reality, it was the elementary schools that had suffered the most under segregation. Before the Supreme Court called for the end of segregation, the Topeka Board of Education began to desegregate the schools. By January 1956, every elementary school in Topeka had been changed to a local school for neighborhood children. These struggles were not so easily overcome elsewhere. The Little Rock Nine faced problems when they tried to desegregate the high school system in Arkansas in 1957. Only with the help of the National Guard did the high school and the city integrate the African American students into their school. The same problems were faced elsewhere as black students began to enter white schools, and parents withdrew their children as a result. The Boston public school system had to implement busing, which transported students across the city to purposefully integrate the schools to abide by federal regulation. Nonetheless, the nation eventually came around and was able to integrate schools and allow students to be educated no matter their race, gender, or creed. Kansas was at the forefront of the battle and was able to help lead the nation into a new age of acceptance and understanding when it came to equality among all students.